Hi, I'm Jock.
Hey, I'm Ray.
You're listening to The Pig Wrestlers, a podcast where Ray and I are reviewing this book, Never Wrestle With A Pig by Mark McCormack. This week is more about time management. So, what ways do you use to manage your time other than kind of writing down the things at the beginning of the day and sort of having a routine?
Not doing something for more than 40 minutes.
Oh, really?
Is the most valuable thing that I've brought to my structure today. Is if you've got so many things on the to-do list, and if you spend a few hours on one thing, the efficacy of that one thing just isn't there. And so I've got one of those was cooking ed timers in my office. And so, you set it at 40 minutes and it's got a shrill ring, right? It completely interrupts you. And, you tuck away what you were working on and you'll come back to it at the time and just get on to the next thing.
Fair enough.
Now, that's a very, very manager's approach to doing things, right? So if you're not doing lots of creative tasks, whether it be coding or designing or writing, that's fine. If you are, there's this great essay by Paul Graham talking about the different structures of time. And that if you are doing something that requires that sort of creative thought, whether it's the problem solving of an engineer or the creativity of an artist or a writer, you don't need those interruptions, right? Because you're so deep in the flow that interrupting that flow is counterproductive.
Yes, I think there are certain things that require a degree of concentration, but not necessarily creativity, that are quite easy for me at least to get into flow on. So if you kind of just getting into the rhythm of doing something, then you might as well just carry on and get on with it. And then with the creative stuff, if you can find the flow when you're doing something creative, it's amazing because just stuff happens. The problem I have is, I'm sure like anyone else, is that it's much harder to find the flow when you're trying to write. You can't force it, and kind of getting frustrated and not being able to getting annoyed about the fact you're not in flow doesn't help get you into flow either.
I don't know if you've got Disney Plus.
Yeah.
The new Pixar film out with Jamie Foxx called Soul.
Yes.
And, he gets into the flow and his spirit elevates.
See, I'm saving that one. I know it came out just at Christmas. I'm saving that one for like kind of the, kids big movie kind of movie night kind of thing.
No, we do meet in movies on a Friday night.
Nice. Yeah, it's very difficult to get a whole film in kind of on weekdays because, to be honest, the kids are a bit younger than yours. So
that's where the meat comes in, right? You set the meat in front of them and the movie, and they just munch away while they're watching.
Nice. So the first lesson, Mark tells us, is it is better to be a racehorse than a plough horse. And the upshot of this seems to be because he said in the first section that he was like, of all of the things that he places most value on is time, his own time and how he uses his time. So he's quite time focused anyway. But for him, it's interesting. He just really does seem to dislike people who essentially sit and cogitate and don't respond or react quickly enough.
Yeah, but it's not just him. And he makes the point that we cast judgment on people who get it quickly.
Yeah, bright people, yeah.
Versus people who are, needing explanation. And I wouldn't say it's fair or right. But we make these assumptions. We just do. And so, a big part of the lesson is you are being judged by other human beings, and it's much better to be seen to be quick on the uptake than it is to be methodical and hardworking, because those traits just don't get as much traction.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where I kind of see where he's coming from, but I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with that entirely. So, for example, sometimes it is more prudent to, go through and give it an appropriate amount of time to think things through and not come to snap decisions. Because I think there's a difference between what he's describing as people who just do get it really quickly and are able to effectively go through the thought process and the analysis rapidly to be able to make a relatively informed decision and to be able to act in an informed way relatively quickly, as opposed to people who take a much longer time to do that. But what I think there's a danger of people thinking is that taking any decision without that informed analysis of any variety is somehow better than sort of doing, sitting back and thinking about it first. So I think not snap reactions as in kind of knee-jerk, no thought, no analysis. But yeah, certainly if you can get to a position of action as opposed to contemplation about the action quicker, then yeah, great, fair enough.
I mean, the important word that you used multiple times there is relative, right? And you can use really simple examples. If you're selling and somebody needs the information and you get a wealth of information, high quality, back very quickly. Wow, you did all that quickly? Or they sent you an email and you respond immediately because you use something like Superhuman and you're on it. It's impressive, right? It leaves an indelible mark on this person is trustworthy. They will get back to me. They will communicate quickly. And sometimes it's just, I'm going to need a bit more time. I will get back to you by this date and time. And obviously you need to then, make sure that happens. But, I think back to when we won that deal with Allianz for Unmortgage. A big part of it was their ability to trust that we would not only have the answers, but we would get them back quickly. And we did. If we had a meeting the day before, they would have a clear presentation with all the responses that they could represent internally without a time lag.
So, okay, so that's fair enough. So he gives the example of the sort of two salespeople's approaches. They're saying, we should sign this famous sports person as talent to the agency. And one person kind of goes and says, right, who do I know? And figures out their contacts and, considers how he's going to approach speaking to this person. While the other sales guy, gets on a plane and introduces himself and tries to sign him on the spot. And there is something good about being able to cut through red tape and being able to kind of just, not follow the process necessarily rigidly every single time if time is of the essence, or actually it just doesn't need to be that involved to begin with. But I think it does seem to, again, kind of almost favour action over contemplation. It favours just do it, which for me, again,
makes you feel uneasy.
Well, it makes me feel a bit uneasy because I think there's acting at the right time. And I'm saying I totally get the fact that if you take it to extremes in the other way and literally just consider and you're striving for perfection because essentially you're afraid of taking the decision, then that's even worse because nothing happens. And the number of times I've railed against sort of bureaucracy where people say, we're just going to need a couple more weeks to think about it. Why can't you've got all the information you need now? I think inaction at that point, when actually all the information is available and it's just a case of saying yes or no, is crazy. But I think just jumping in almost, leaping before you look, is taking.
You've just described an episode of The Apprentice, right?
Oh God, it
But
annoys me so much, that program. I can't
yeah, but
watch it.
that's why it's compelling watching, right? Because it annoys everybody. And they pick the choice scenes where the apprentices, the candidates, make all their mistakes, right? Because that's when we shout at the TV, and that's great TV. But you see that dichotomy between the planner and the impulsive, and obviously the right thing is to get the balance, is
Yeah,
to figure out what you're doing in the day and then go and do it. Whereas, there's always the two extremes, right? One team just spends the whole time trying to plan, and because they're not learning whether the plan is going to work.
yeah, I
And the
agree.
other goes out, no plan, and falls flat on their face, and then doesn't know what to do next.
Yeah, yes, yes. Somewhere in between those two extremes is better, I think. But also, I think that idea of kind of, oh, how hard could it be?
We are
Ignorance is bliss.
we are short of time. It's the most invaluable resource we have, and so I think as human beings, we value it so much more, whether consciously or subconsciously. And if you're working with other people and they feel you're not respecting their time, they're not going to give you their time.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that control over what I choose to spend my time on is absolutely fundamentally important to me. But at the same time, I think I want to be able to indulge sometimes in a more considered approach to something, and sometimes I just want to get something done. I just don't think I don't think it's necessarily the right thing to say that always just getting something done, bam, 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 is the right approach in every situation.
Startup, right? Lean startup. The way Eric Ries writes about it, you need to be doing to learn,
Yeah,
and reflect on it, and then do the next thing and do the next thing. But without the doing,
yeah,
you'll be just acting on your own assumptions, and you're not bringing new knowledge into the picture.
that's true. That is true. One thing I really liked, there's the bit where he's talking about when there's a sort of more junior employee, and they are kind of like the racehorse, so they're really quick off the mark, and they're really productive, and they're really capable, and it's kind of beginning to make that person's manager, their boss, look a little bit rubbish, because they're clearly not as talented as the person they're managing. And I just quite liked it because the way he kind of describes the solution to the problem, which is essentially, yes, to promote the guy, but to take him out from underneath that person and just put him somewhere completely different, so as not to undermine the manager's position. I thought that was quite nice because it showed, again, that sense of reasonableness and empathy, and thinking about all of the parties involved, not just wanting to take the talent out. Because so often, I think, you've seen the situation in other companies where somebody's really good, and if they happen to be in the good books of the powers that be, they get kind of pulled up, and everyone just gets smashed out of the way, and they don't care whose toes they tread on. But I just quite like the fact that this, poor manager who's kind of been trundling along, doing a perfectly fine job, I'm sure, but not to the ability of this new person. I like the fact that he takes into account that person's feelings and sense of worth by being a bit more what's the word? Not diplomatic, but just a little bit more human about the way he takes that person out from underneath him. I don't know. It just struck me as being a really nice approach, and I think it says more about the author than it does necessarily about the situation that he's using as an example there.
I think that's why people are successful, is they have enough experience and understanding about other people that they can, be good to other people, or be useful or helpful to other people. It always brings me back to Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is often portrayed as this person who's just rude to other people. The fact is, he would never have been able to do all of those deals and produce all of those products if he didn't get people and, take care of people, whether it's early days Apple or later Apple or Pixar or Next, or, he reinvented the music industry. Right? Spotify would not exist if he hadn't got that deal done for iTunes. And there's so many examples littered in his career alone. And now you look at like Elon Musk. People can say all the things about his personality, but the fact is he inspires and motivates, and what he's achieved with his multiple companies is nothing short of miraculous. Like the financial world was literally betting against him. Short selling his stock to the point where, he was almost bankrupt, having to raise more capital. And I think that understanding of other people and what motivates people and how to treat people, those little moments, taking care of those difficult decisions, is the difference. Right? It's the difference between people who lead and people who, what do they say? That's the sign of most plow horses. They prefer to plow around in their own field.
They don't want to be observed or seen because as soon as they get put under scrutiny, it might expose them as not being as capable as they once thought. So people who kind of deliberately hide away in the background. I think again, there's always going to be a mix of people, and I think there's always going to be people who, for whatever reason, just don't want that level of pressure or burden on them. And I guess it's not to say that you can't work with those kind of people and get something good out of them. I think it's understanding that they have no intention of getting the accolades and being the top of the leaderboard, and no amount of coaching will ever get them to change their mind. They're just happy they've hit their stride, they're at a particular level, and they don't particularly want to go any further than that. And you've still got to be able to do something with those kind of people. And I don't think he's necessarily saying that it's problematic to have those kind of people, because he does talk about the examples, but clearly he favours the racehorses over the plough horses, as he puts it. But I think sometimes it's a tricky one. There's an element of you've got to work with what you've got, and sometimes you don't necessarily have the choice of picking the makeup of the team.
But I think that's the general point, is we all favour the overnight success, the rising star, the speed is something that is attractive to us.
Yeah, I like the kind of little closing line, kind of as a warning to managers. You can always tell a racehorse by the respect mixed with envy he or she breeds in his colleagues. Your job is to prevent that envy from turning into jealousy and resentment. You're listening to the Pig Wrestlers podcast. We're meant to be reviewing the book Never Wrestle With A Pig by Mark McCormack, but we don't always get around to it.